Sunbelt surprises. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so we'll do both Sunbelt surprises for the good and then Sunbelt surprises for the not so good. And then a quick discussion on the Georgia Southern AD taking a lesser title job, but probably for more money. All right. So it's easy to say who the number one surprise is. I still think they are the number one surprise in the entire country, despite their lopsided loss last week to South Alabama. It is ULM. They are 5-2, and they have lost to Texas and South Alabama, and that's it. They have some hard games coming up. And they only need one more to get a bowl game, including this weekend's matchup against Marshall. They're a 10.5-point underdog, which I'm surprised at, but winning on the road is tough. ULM is 3-1 in the conference. My guy, Bill Bender from the Sporting News, who ranked them 134th in the country, right? And that was not something that Bryant Vincent and the Warhawks were shying away from. Yeah, we're 134th in the country. We got a lot of work to do. Bill Bender this week from the Sporting News put them up to 77th. So almost halfway up the entire list from the worst to almost smack dab in the middle. So ULM is not only the biggest surprise in the Sun Belt, but maybe the biggest surprise in the country. They do have to finish it off. A few years ago, Kane Wommack's first season, they got 5 wins. They never got that 6th win. So there's still work to do. We'll see if they're favored in another one of those ball games because the schedule is not easy for ULM. Surprise number 2 in the conference is going to be Old Dominion, right? They are sitting atop the Eastern Division of the Sun Belt, although not on the Sun Belt standings on sunbelt.org, on sunbeltsports.org. I don't know why that is the case because Old Dominion beat Georgia Southern. I'm presuming they're doing it by overall winning percentage. Georgia Southern is 5-3. Excuse me, and Old Dominion is 4-4. But both teams are 3-1. And so Old Dominion with Colton Joseph going off, replacing Grant Wilson, they have to be considered the next biggest surprise because, again, were they picked any higher than 5th? I should have done this earlier. Sunbelt coaches poll football. All right. 2024. We have everything else ready to go, but that's not it. All right. Preseason awards. All right. This came out in July. ODU was picked to finish 6th in the Sun Belt East. So they were picked ahead of Georgia State. So they are absolutely a huge surprise. Now, it's going to be tough for the next couple of teams based on where they were picked. But what about Georgia Southern? All right. I mean, technically, they're tied for first. They're behind ODU, but they were picked 4th in the East. And right now, they are tied for first. All right. Again, behind Old Dominion, but both squads are 3-1. So give credit to Clay Helton. Came up with that miracle win against Marshall, downed JMU. All right, got steamrolled by ODU, but those things happen. We'll see how they bounce back. They're heading to South Alabama, and that may have disaster written all over it. All right, South Alabama leads the Sun Belt in rushing with 216 yards a game, and Georgia Southern is 9th in 185 yards a game allowed. So that is not a good recipe for the Georgia Southern Eagles. Let's see who else may be a surprise positively. I guess you have to say the Cajuns. The Cajuns were picked 3rd in the West, and of course they are atop the standings. I did not agree with the Troy thing. That was my one shocking pick. We'll get to that in the next segment. But the Cajuns went from overrated to contenders in like a couple of weeks with me. Because even when the Vegas got the Cajuns to, I think it was like 8.5 wins, we're like, hold on here. What are you guys serious? You think we're going to get 9 wins? Fans didn't believe that. Like, what are we talking about here? And then we started breaking it down again. And if the QB came to play, we've talked about this. Good offensive line, good running backs, good wide receivers. They're throwing to the tight end more often. Good defensive line, good linebackers. Depth at the secondary. All right. They did lose Cortland Flowers. We probably should have reported this at the top of the show. That's an old story, but Keon Martin, I'm sure most of you know by now, did leave with the Cajuns. He was on the plane following 2 nights ago scare in San Marcos. So that's good news. But the Cajuns were talented all over the place. And the big question was quarterback. And if Ben Wooldridge was healthy, he was going to be the guy. He's healthy. I mean, he's got to be. There's some other guys that have slightly better stats. Jordan McLeod has better stats. Alonzo Barnett III has better stats. Gio Lopez has pretty good stats. None of them are leading the division right now. And so if Ben Wooldridge leads the Cajuns to the Western Division Championship, and he's going to be your Sun Belt Player of the Year. That's the way that's going to work out. The stats may not be actually all that close. I guess we can take a look at that quickly. But he's going to be the guy. If they win it, they still have to win it. Let's see here. Passing wise, leaders, right? Passing. So Joey Aguilar, this is done by yards. Oh, average yards a game. All right. So Aguilar is first. Wooldridge is second. Wooldridge's got 16 touchdowns. McLeod has 20 touchdowns. Alonzo Barnett has 18 touchdowns, but a lot of these guys don't have any interceptions. That's the really impressive thing. Jordan McLeod does have 7, but Alonzo Barnett has 18 touchdowns, only 2 picks. That's amazing. The problem with App State, and we'll get to that in the next segment, Aguilar's got 14 touchdowns, but 9 interceptions. Wooldridge has got 4 interceptions. And Gio Lopez does not throw for very much. But I think he's got like 13 touchdowns and 1 interception. There he is. He's got 13 touchdowns and 1 interception. So I think that's awesome. Let me see. Did I miss him before? Average per game. Where is Gio Lopez? No, Gio Lopez is 5th in average yardage per game. All right. So some guys have better statistics than Ben Wooldridge, but his team's atop the standings. Is there any other team that is on the positive side of that? I'm not sure Arkansas State is. I think Arkansas State is exactly where, they're 3rd in the division. They're 5-3. They're 3-1. They were picked to finish 4th in the division. I'd like what I've seen out of Arkansas State in terms of taking that next step, winning when things don't go according to plan. And that's what we like to see. Jalen Rayner has led them to 3, in some cases, come from ahead victories at home. And that's really impressive. Although his statistics are not as impressive as they were last year, they're getting those close victories, and that's pretty cool. I guess the other one would be Marshall. Let's see where Marshall was picked, because I don't think they were picked very high. Maybe they were picked about 4th. They were picked 5th. Marshall was picked 5th, and they're standing, they're 2-1. They're a half a game out of first place, if you will. So they're 2-1 in the conference. And remember, they're hosting ULM this week. And so Marshall's 3rd. They're right there. All right. They're in 3rd place. They're behind ODU and Georgia Southern. So Marshall's got to be a surprise. So again, ULM is the biggest surprise probably in the country in the Sun Belt. And then ODU is after that. Then probably the Cajuns. And then I'd say Georgia Southern. I'd say Georgia Southern before the Cajuns, because I think most people thought that the Cajuns had a shot. I'm not sure people thought that Georgia Southern was going to take that leap. In both cases, teams that were supposed to be good in their divisions are not. And so the Cajuns have taken advantage, and so has Georgia Southern. So I put Georgia Southern third, Cajuns fourth. And then we have Arkansas State, and then we have Marshall. So those are the surprises for the good. There are some surprises for the not so good, and we will do that when we come back after I tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. We're getting so close. We got one more day, folks. You guys got to get me to 1,600. I'm sitting there at like 1,596. You guys got to get me to 1,600. Come on. 1,600 subscribers. It's going to be tough to get that 2,000, admittedly. But we got basketball coming up. Baseball schedules were released. We're looking forward to having a lot of fun. So I do appreciate all the support, but we do need 4 more subscribers to get us to that 1,600 level. All right, surprises number 2. And there are plenty on this list. We did the good surprises, and then I'm not calling the bad surprises, but we do have the surprises and the not so good surprises, if you will. And obviously, App State is at the top excuse me, of that list. They're 1-3. They just did snap their 3-game losing streak, picking up their first win in the Sun Belt. They're 3-4 overall. We know that area has been, severely damaged. Someone telling me that it may not be fixed in their lifetime. I hope that is not the case, or back to normal in their lifetime. And so that's so much bigger, although we know how important App State football is to lovely Boone, North Carolina. But their issues started way before the storm hit. They just have not been very good. As we mentioned, Aguilar with the 14 touchdowns, but 9 interceptions. 5 of those were against the Cajuns. They just have not lived up to the expectations. I had them number 1 in the East. I think everybody else had them number 1 in the East. And because that was based on same quarterback, same coach. That's what that was based on. And it just has not worked out. App State has floundered this year. Now, what do they have still? Let me see. Hold on a second. Let's see what they got. They're 3-4. So they have Old Dominion this weekend. Huge ball game for both teams. They're at Coastal, James Madison at Georgia Southern. They were actually favored at home against Old Dominion. I think that's homecoming. I think it was supposed to be against Georgia State, but they moved it due to the damage from the storm. And they get Old Dominion this weekend. I mean, can they win 3 out of these 4 ball games? 2 are on the road. You got James Madison and Old Dominion at home. You're at Coastal. You're at Georgia Southern. Not impossible, but also probably not likely. All right. But you certainly can turn your season around again. Not meeting expectations is going to be disappointing. But if you win, 4 out of your last 5 or 5 out of your last 5, obviously you got to end up on a positive note. So we will see if that happens. And it starts this week with Old Dominion. The other surprise, this one I had nailed. I just thought it was too much for Troy with the new coach, the new quarterback, the new running back, Chris Lewis, who is now healthy. He was out. All the guys who left defensively, all the coaches who left. I just thought it was too much of a tall task for Jared Parker in his first year. And then Goose Crowder, the starting quarterback, goes down. So that's even tougher to overcome. I did have them finishing 6th, right in front of, wait for it, ULM in the Sun Belt Western Division. So Troy has got to be, they were picked 2nd in the division, and they have been, they've been bad. All right. There's no other way to put that. They probably played their best game since their lone win this past weekend, and they came up short against Arkansas State. They couldn't get a stop when they needed to, but they did come from, 23-3. They'd come all the way back from that. Again, talked about it the other day. I don't think they're seeing the light in the tunnel. I don't think they're in the tunnel, but we'll find out this week. They're hosting Coastal at home. Do they even see the tunnel? And if they can come up with a victory against Coastal Carolina, maybe they do. Coastal making a coaching change, as Tim Beck is going to call the offensive plays for the Chanticleers. So if App State's number 1, Troy is number 2, the other big surprise on the bad is going to be the Texas State Bobcats. I'm not sure I thought they were going to run away with this, but I was convinced that they were the best team in the division, and they're not. They've had chinks in the armor since the beginning of the season, letting games like Arizona State and Sam Houston get away from them. What was it? ODU, right? Why do I think that's confused myself with the games that they lost? Let's see here. But that may be it. At ODU. I think that was more about ODU playing well than Texas State playing poorly. But, it came up and bit them again against the Cajuns on Tuesday night, driving the length of the field, not once but twice, and kicking field goals, falling behind. And then, one bad turnover by Ishmael Mahdi, getting the ball stripped from him. And then, a tipped pass by Kyron Mims, allowing Tyrone Lewis to come away with the interception to end the ball game. It has just not gone the way Texas State had thought it was. It didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. They have to be the 3rd most, disappointing team in the Sun Belt this season. Let me see what they got here. They do have 4 wins. They are 4-4, so they still can go bowling. But they are at ULM. They get Southern Miss and Georgia State at home. You would think those would be wins. And then you're at South Alabama. We'll see where their heads are, and we'll see where South Alabama is. South Alabama can put it all together. They're pretty good, all right, especially offensively. Let's see if we got another. See, it's tough to say Southern Miss is disappointing because that's where they were picked. They were picked to finish 6th, and that's basically where they're sitting. Are we going to say JMU? I have to go back to see how I picked them. JMU is sitting in the middle of the pack. They're 4th. New coach, Bob Chesney, big fan of his. They're 6-2. They're 2-2 in the Sun Belt. Alonzo Barnett, has been really good for most of the season. We went over his stats earlier. 18 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They do have, a couple tough losses. They lost on the road to ULM, and they just lost on the road to Georgia Southern. They did rebound with a nice win over Southern Miss. So I would say James Madison is probably a little bit of a disappointment, but not that much. They can still finish the season 8-4 and have a solid season. They could certainly maybe win out and still contend in the Sun Belt East. But I would say of all the teams that are disappointing, they're the least of the disappointing. Does that make sense? I'm sure they're disappointed. No doubt about it. Could have beaten ULM, didn't. Really not in the other ball game against Georgia Southern. So they've had 2 bad ball games, and they have a shot at still having a very good season. So it's not that disappointing outside of not contending for the Sun Belt East. And really, they're one game back, right? Although they do lose the tiebreaker to Georgia Southern, and they'll get ODU. Oh, no, did ODU? Hold on. Again, in my mind, I can't keep these things straight. Oh, let's see who ODU has beaten. Oh, no, they still get ODU and James Madison. They're still going at it. ODU has beaten Georgia State, Texas State, and Georgia Southern. So, again, it's not out of the realm of possibility that JMU can still get back in this thing. I guess technically so can Texas State, but they need more teams. There's not a lot of teams in between, the Cajuns and Texas State. So I think those are the most disappointing teams. Let's see. It all starts with App State because they just have not lived up to anyone's expectations. They're 1. Troy has got to be 2 in terms of disappointing. Texas State has got to be 3. And then James Madison is 4. Coastal? Where was Coastal picked? Coastal was picked 3rd, and they're sitting behind James Madison in 5th, and they've already fired the offensive coordinator. So I guess disappointing. I'm not sure I thought where Coastal Carolina was going to be with Ethan Basco. But again, that goes back to the whole quarterback coach combination that we thought was going to be a little bit better in their second year. In terms of teams like, Georgia State and Southern Miss, they're disappointing. They're having disappointing seasons, but I don't think anybody is surprised. All right. We've seen a little growth out of Georgia State. We'll see how they can finish up. Maybe they found their quarterback in Zach Gibson. We'll see how they finish up the rest of the season. All right. When we come back, the Georgia Southern AD taking the job with Auburn. Lesser title, more money. We will tell you that right after I talk to you about 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or agonizing second overtimes, which is why they've created the Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are in first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. You know who else gave me a bit of fan fuel this week? It was a Raging Cajuns Tyrone Lewis III making that huge clutch interception to end up putting the game away for the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. And when you go to bed at 12:30 Eastern time and you get up at 5 o'clock to go to work, you use that 5 Hour Energy. And that's what I did following a late night after the Cajuns and Texas State. I still got my tropical, can I read it? Tropical Burst. That's what I got. All right. Still have a few of those. All right. Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day. I like the way Craig Stevenson put it from AL.com when word came down that Jared Benko, the Georgia Southern AD, took a executive deputy athletic director job with Auburn. All right. And so, as Craig put it, that goes along the lines of Power 5 coaches. I would rephrase that. In some cases, Power 5 coaches, Chip Kelly, but Power 4 coaches, Sean Elliott, Ken Womack, taking demotion job title-wise, although I think Kane got at least a 50% raise, if not 100% raise, to coach defense over at Alabama. Sean Elliott, I think, went way down because he's just the tight ends coach. He went from head coach at Georgia State to just a position coach. And some of that has to do with, Sean's family was still in Columbia, so he's going home. That's a no-brainer on his part. But not having to recruit outside of whatever area he has to recruit and has to deal with the NIL. He's leaving that up to somebody else. Kane Womack, I don't think liked that he was overlooked from Mississippi State, not once, but twice. And so he went to a Power 5 gig, whereas because Jeff Lebby, who has how many wins at Mississippi State this year, as having never been a head coach in his entire career, he's got one win. And so Kane took a high-profile job to work with his friend over at Alabama. And so do we have kind of that going on here? It is tough to be a G5 AD. Admittedly, it wasn't easy to begin with. And now with NIL, it has become even more difficult. I presume Georgia Southern has a pretty good NIL deal like App State would. It's a very, very tight community, not that big, but tight. And they're going to try and take care of their own. And there's just a limited amount of growth that Georgia Southern can do beyond what they've already done. All right. And so I think everybody thought that Jared Benko did an outstanding job, but he's going on to take an executive director's deputy position, working under John Cohen. Probably got more money. That's what I'm going to guess. All right. And let me see if it says what he's going to do. By the way, Georgia Southern did promote Chris Davis. He's been with Georgia Southern. This would be his 5th season in Statesboro. So I would think that, he is raring to go. Let me see what it says. Jared Benko, this is a press release from Auburn. Jared Benko has nearly 2 decades of experience in collegiate athletic administration, including serving as director of athletics at Georgia Southern, has been named executive deputy athletic director at Auburn. It was announced on Wednesday. As the landscape of college athletics shifts, Benko's role will focus on strategic planning and implementation of a structure to ensure Auburn can continue to compete at the highest level. I don't know what that means. Benko will also oversee business operations, contracts, personnel, and funding mechanisms for capital projects. That's basically what it is. He is there to raise the money, and business operations, meaning dealing with the clients and the sponsors. So he's there to sell. He's there to sell, and he's there to raise funds for anything that they have to build over at Auburn. And obviously those are huge projects, right? Compared to what you would get done at Statesboro. I think Auburn has pretty much really good facilities. Maybe they need to up the baseball facility and softball facilities a little bit more. I don't know, but that's where it's going to be on his list. So he took a lesser title, and ADs don't make nearly as much as you think. They don't. And certainly not somebody who's going to, move from Auburn or from Georgia Southern to Auburn, but wouldn't be surprised if he doubled his pay, right? Don't think he's making $1 million at Auburn. ADs don't make nearly as much as you think. And, be interesting to know what John Cohen makes. We'll probably find that out. But he went from Mississippi State to Auburn, right? But I'm sure Jared's got a big pay raise, but it just tells you it is tough to be an AD in G5. I am impressed and a little bit surprised that Brian Maggard is still with the Cajuns. We'll see what happens when this stadium gets done, right? They're building the football stadium. It will be done for 2025. It would be interesting. I don't know anything. But does Brian retire? He just signed an extension. Does he go in some sort of executive role overseeing it? And does somebody like, I don't know, Nico Yanko come back, who's doing a great job here in Kentucky at Murray State? He's done a fabulous job as AD at Murray State. Does he take the Cajuns' job after the football stadium is built? I don't know. I don't have any idea. I'm just throwing names out there and having a little fun. I don't know what Brian's plans are. I'm impressed that he's stayed. There have been some SEC openings. I don't know if he's been considered. Missouri had an opening. I'm not sure if that's something that interests him or not. That's where he came from. And obviously he's done I think he's done a very solid job With the Cajuns, got to figure out how to get more fans to the basketball games, but that's a different story. But it just shows you that the coaches aren't the only ones that are taking lesser roles but more money, because the roles that they were in may not get them to where they want to be, and there may be less responsibility, and you're getting paid more in the new roles. It's kind of odd that's the case, but that's the way the college landscape is. And again, credit to Craig Stevenson from AL.com for pointing that out. All right, we will be back on Thursday for Friday's episode. We will preview the football game on Friday. It's UConn and Georgia State. And we'll do the rest of the action for Saturday as well. But we won't forget about UConn and Georgia State. I'm going to sit here right now on Thursday, and I can't tell you who the coach of UConn is. I will find that out for Friday for Friday's episode. But they are surprising. What did I say yesterday? 5-3. That's impressive. All right, please, again, we are so close to 1,600 subscribers. Would really appreciate that boost. We've had, again, a record-setting month in September for views on YouTube, a record-setting month on views in October. Really appreciate all the support. We're still climbing. It'll be outstanding if we could somehow get to 1,600 by the end of the month, and then still hoping, it's an outside shot, I get it, for the 2,000 by the end of the year. So we got to do 200 subscribers in November and 200 in December. We'll see if we can do it. All right. Everybody have a great Thursday, and we will talk to you again on Friday. You've been listening and watching to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.